Welcome to LYLAS. If you were born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, then this podcast is definitely for you. Today, we have our third guest to the LYLAS podcast, and she is somebody that I've known since we were little kids. I think probably elementary age, I want to say. We met when your mom married my best friend at the time, her dad. And so we became fast friends. And I think, like most childhood friends, you kind of lose touch over time. And then through social media, I sort of reconnected with you. We were pregnant with our children about the same time, and sort of just started to follow your story. And you've been so open and honest in sharing your story, which I personally find so inspirational when people can go on there and share the hard stuff and not just the highlight reel. And so I find your story inspiring. I find you inspiring. I frequently comment just how you're a warrior, because that's what I think every time I read your posts. So welcome to the LYLAS podcast, Niki Stevens.
Well, thanks for having me, really, Jenny. It's just such a trip seeing you and hearing you, and after all these years. So it's different when it's But I'm glad that you've been following me on Facebook, and at least one person is finding it interesting. But yeah, so I'm happy to be here, and a little bit about my story is that I was always active, and even in college, decided to join the cross country team like an idiot, but I did, and no, and it was not soon after that. It was 2006. Whenever I was walking around, and I felt like I was wearing tall boots, and like my legs felt really tight, and it just really wasn't making sense because I was wearing like flats. And I started to, like, my right leg started dragging a little bit, and just like you said, I was very close to my stepdad was a chiropractor, and I'm like, I need to go in to see him, and I've probably pulled a muscle or pulled something in my back or whatever. And when I went in there, he was like, "Oh, sweetheart, like you need to go have an MRI right now. It looks like you have MS." And I was like, "What? I'm 24. This doesn't make sense. And I'm really healthy, and I'm a runner. What?" And sure enough, I guess I was one of the lucky ones in a weird way. It was like I had that MRI, and within a week they told me the diagnosis. And some people have to go through a couple of years of trying to figure out what's going on. But mom was like, "Oh yeah, obviously you've got it." So that was kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. I don't know how you want to look at it, but that was 17 years ago.
Wow.
This year. Yeah. Yeah. So currently, that makes me 41, and I live in South Charleston and by myself in a house that I bought. But it's been 2 years since I sort of was kind of pummeled into a wheelchair, kind of made that decision that it was, so that was hard. But yeah, I get around okay. So that's kind of like the short of it, I guess.
Yeah. And yeah, I didn't realize that Jan, your stepdad, was the first one to kind of give you that news, or sort of that inkling that maybe this is what's going on.
I thought he was joking. I really
Right.
did. I was just like, okay, I don't know what MS is, but I hope you're wrong, obviously.
Right. And I'm going to assume it doesn't run in your family, or no one that you knew of.
Well, I've got a fairly distant cousin who has it, but typically MS. I mean, so there's two parts of it really. Is that you've got maybe a genetic predisposition to it, and then there's some type of environmental trigger
Mm-hmm.
that it gets some people and it doesn't. And like last year, it came out after this gigantic study over a couple decades that it's highly related to the Epstein-Barr virus. which
Okay.
is like the monovirus, and I think 95% of the population has Epstein-Barr, but not, of course, not everybody gets MS. But
Right.
it's pretty well known that everybody with MS has Epstein-Barr.
Epstein-Barr.
Yeah. So there's a link there. It's just like winning the lottery or getting
Right.
hit by lightning.
Right.
Women get it typically more than men, at a higher rate than men. I think by like three times more women than men, and also being white, and then being in the further you are from the equator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
what I was reading up a little bit just to have some context, and yeah, that's exactly what I read.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
interesting because
So hey, let's all move south, but
right,
it doesn't work that way. Yeah, I wish it did. let's move south and be cured, right? Yeah.
right. I know it was so hard to picture. When right before you went through your transplant, we'll talk about that a little bit, but um, it was so hard when I was like watching that video of you, because all I could picture was you doing back bends and like back walkovers and just how athletic you were, always so like naturally athletic. And, you know, as girls, we're always comparing ourselves. And I was like, oh man, I wish I could be like her. And, you know, you were like a runner, and everything seemed to come easy athletically to you. I was not fortunate in that way. And so watching how quickly I think that sort of was taken from you, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but it just seems like it progressed pretty quickly after you were diagnosed.
Yeah. And just like they say, which is confusing, I think, and I didn't understand it until many years with the disease, is, you know, they always say, oh, it affects everybody differently. But, and what that really means is that, you know, the way that MS works, like the mechanism of what it does to your body is it destroys it creates lesions, right? So multiple scars is what it means. And it attacks what's called myelin, which is like the conductive sheath on all of your nerves. And it eats away at that, and then your nerves can't communicate, and then you lose various wherever those lesions develop. So you could potentially have, you know, 50 lesions on your brain and have no symptoms, depending on where they are, or you could have one, or like in my case, I've got two big fat lesions between C2 and C4 on my neck, that if they weren't there, I would have no disability.
Wow.
So you can have a boatload of lesions, or you can have one that completely changes your life. So that's what that really means, affecting everybody differently. So it's like you have the disease. Some people, I met a guy, I actually bought a wheelchair van that I'm going to be able to drive. I bought that finally last weekend. And the man I bought it from was diagnosed with it in 2003, and he hasn't had any problems. And it was just sitting there looking at him like, wow, really? Yeah. And it was his sister who had the van, but you know, she fell off a roof and was a paraplegic, and she doesn't need the van anymore. But I was just like, wait a minute. Is this are you selling the van, or is it your sister? And so so some people just get lucky. You can get benign forms of MS, and then other people can get and live normal lives. And then you can get the progressive forms, that can take you out pretty quickly. And there's no way to predict what you're going to get, until you see the clinical symptoms. So even lesion loads and MRIs and all that stuff, I mean, they're understanding now that it's harder to predict. It's all based on, you know, your clinical symptoms. And yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about what those clinical symptoms are? Because, you know, MS is considered a neurodegenerative disease, right? And so in that case, it is attacking those areas of the brain, and it does so chronically and progressively. But the symptom presentation is different. And I could just, I mean, running and being active, I mean, I would absolutely just contribute like that first symptom that you talked about to probably like my blood sugar being low or like what you had mentioned. But I think it would be helpful for our listeners just to kind of hear that because we're always dismissing things that are going on with us and focusing on everything else. And so to have some ideas as to what that might be could be so helpful.
Well, it's difficult. So another thing that whenever right before I went to see Dr. Harbour, I was running in Canal State Forest, and all of a sudden I felt. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you can't make yourself run fast?
Yes.
You know, and how weird that feels, and
Yes.
that's how it felt. But it was real life, and I was like, "What is happening?" Like I couldn't make my legs move faster than it was strange. Like I couldn't sprint. And so okay, so some of the symptoms, right? Again, it all depends. It all depends on where the disease activity is happening. Yeah, MS is a progressive disease of the central nervous system, and your nervous system, I mean, controls everything. I mean, think about it: feeling, touch, your sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of your sight, your hearing, your digestive system, your heart, your blood pressure, breathing, the release of your hormones. Every system in your body is connected to nerves, and so it's hard. So a lot of people present with like the largest nerve in your body is your optic nerve. So a lot of people experience a loss of vision or in and out, and then are diagnosed that way. I only had it thankfully once, and I lost my vision. I lost my central field of vision right after I was diagnosed for about 10 months.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, but way back then, and that's what's kind of hard about this is that what I know now, if I would had known then, because back then nobody in my family who knows how to deal with some. I was like, well, this is what it's like to have MS, but now it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm having a relapse, I need to jump on like a bucket of steroids and that'll take care of it. So back then it was just anyway. So a lot of people present with optic neuritis, others with balance problems, kind of like me. I mean, there's such a variety of symptoms as well. I mean, I struggle the most with with pain, and I did not experience pain with MS until just a couple of years ago. And I always thought, like, what's the painful part of MS? It doesn't hurt, but once your nerves start kind of dying off, something called neuropathy, which is like burning of your skin and I mean, that's a bummer. That's a big bummer. I mean, aside from not being able to walk and that kind of stuff. And, so but in the early stages, it's usually balance, usually eyesight. Some people get really bad migraine headaches. I never had. But yeah, that's probably yeah.
Did you have any complications while you were pregnant or?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so I'm like backwards lucky, right? So there's something that if they understand it, I haven't read about it, but supposedly when you're pregnant with MS, it's like you get that 10 months, 9 or 10 months, you get a break from MS. All the symptoms go away. There's something about your immune system that launches into protective mode, and you don't have relapses and like blah blah blah. So, but as soon as you have that baby, it's like you've saved up and everything that charges back at you. What happened to me though, I had a nice pregnancy, and then I was going to go tour the hospital where I was going to give birth in, and I was 33 weeks. It was the morning of 33 weeks pregnant, and I got in the shower and my arm was numb, and I was like, okay, this is not happening. And I tried to ignore it. I get to the hospital to look around. I run into my high risk OB. And he's like, hey, what's going on? Long story short, I'm like, oh, I'm just here to look at the hospital. My arm's kind of numb. He's like, cool. Have him go pack your bag. I'm admitting you. And I'm like, wait, no.
No.
Like, this is no, you're fine. Like, this is an overkill. He was right. So they gave me like a gram of prednisone every day for a week, and I wasn't getting any better. And so they delivered me 34 weeks pregnant. I was on the operating table when I heard the surgeon go, I'm so glad we did this. And I was like, wait, hang on. What? And he's like, no. He was like, well, we'll explain when we're done. So when it happened, right. It's not something you want to hear.
No.
I mean, honestly, right. So what had happened was my son had wrapped the umbilical cord around his neck twice and became really distressed, and then had his first BM inside of me.
Mhm.
Thank God he didn't aspirate it. But who knows when that happened. And that's what just made my immune system just go into like, a King Kong gorilla, just like, so that was awful. Like when I say that, I mean, recovering from a cesarean section is just unbelievable anyway. But all the prednisone they had me on, I mean, I still looked fully pregnant at 6 months. I couldn't hold him for like a 6 weeks, I think, because my arms were so, my arms were just, I wasn't safe. I had to sit, and he had to be positioned. I mean, it was just awful. And I was overproducing milk, which, by the way, nobody explained. That was the most painful part, right? All these steroids were making me overproduce milk. And like, I'm not a large person to begin with. And like, it was this, I would like turn and look at the mirror if I wasn't like pumping. Like if I missed the window by like 10 minutes, I would like turn around and my boobs would be square, It was just like, I remember just looking up from the couch, hooked up to this industrial size, like, breast pump, and looking up at Cooper's dad in full, like, I was completely serious, crying, and I yelled at him. And I was like, am I dying? Like, this is what it looks like. Is this what it feels like? But yeah, that was intense. But yeah. So I got through that, but it was really hard. But so that was, but I know women with MS, and even more aggressive types of MS that, have 2 or 3 kids, and I don't know how they do it, but they've done it. Not me. That was it. That was good.
You're like, I got my one. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm not going to roll the dice again. So that was good. And he's an angel. So yeah.
He's so cute too.
Thanks.
And so he was right around what, like just shy of 2 when when you went for your transplant. Is it called a transplant? I mean, I don't know if I'm saying that correct.
So if you are familiar with Selma Blair,
yes,
who is the celebrity that has MS, and she went through the chemo thing, right? She's probably spoke about it on Dancing with the Stars, which, by the way, I didn't watch. I did. Everybody's like, did you see her on there? I'm like, no, I didn't watch it. So it's the same treatment that she had, except she had hers at Northwestern and I had mine in Moscow. Essentially what it is what's called an autologous bone marrow transplant. So it's not an actual organ transplant. I know that's hard to, sometimes people think it's surgery, but it's not. So the idea of that, so let me back up a little bit. Before this, so this is like, I remember the first time, it's called HSCT. So I can't pronounce it. it's hematopedic, stem cell transplant, I think. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. Edit that part out. But but that I remember hearing about that treatment like in 2012. And basically it was described to me as you're brought to the brink of death. Your immune system is completely wiped out, and then you're brought back, but it's only reserved for like, life-saving measures. And so my doctors were always like, you're too healthy to do it, blah, blah, blah. So since 2006, when I was diagnosed, I've been on every medicine. I mean, every type of MS medicine. I mean, now they've come out with stuff that I haven't tried since. But anyway, up until when did I have the transplant? 2019. Okay, up until then, yeah, I have been on every medicine. So I was still getting worse. I lived in New York at the time, and my doctor at Cornell, I ran it by him because I saw it on a Facebook group, and I said, "Wait a second, you guys are actually getting this treatment? I thought they wouldn't just give it to people, and people are like, no, you can get it in Northwestern in Chicago, you can get it in Moscow, you can get it in Mexico, blah, blah, blah." So I asked my neurologist. He had never mentioned it to me, right? And as soon as I said it, he said, "I've had 4 patients that have done it, and I think you would be a good candidate." I was like, "Say no more."
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going, because that's the nuclear kind of attack, for MS. But now I've learned that, and I know people that have had it as a first line of treatment. They get diagnosed and they have this before MS gets worse, before you deal with like aging consequences of having MS. Like if you picture, a house burning, you want to put the fire out, right? So you can preserve some of the structural integrity of it. But the longer you let the house burn, you're just going to have to bulldoze it, right? It's going to be like not unsalvageable, but same kind of concept, right? So I was year 12 when I had my transplant. So all that they can say, I haven't been on any drugs since, any MS drugs since. And from every test that exists, I'm in remission. But you can, as you know, Jenny, I'm clinically worse, but I haven't had any new symptoms. I've just been weaker, and that can be an after effect of chemo. So what the transplant is you're in a really controlled hospitalized setting. You're given some type of medicine that pulls your bone marrow, your stem cells from your blood into your peripheral blood, and they pull it out, spin it through some machine, separate it out, and then hose you with like as much chemotherapy as a breast cancer patient would have in a year. They do that in like 4 days. And then to where you don't have any immune system, you're in isolation, and then they give it back to you, right? Like they give you, it's like a turkey baster in your neck. They do. It's awful. And then and then you grow a new immune system that is self-tolerant. Your immune system, it's brand new. It's like a baby's. And at because at some point your immune system becomes intolerant of itself, and that's what autoimmune disease is. So the idea with this type of transplant is that you grow a new one, and it doesn't remember you have MS. It's a brand new thing, and maybe this time around, you won't have, it'll be what damage you do have still exists, of course, because it scars. So yeah, that's what I had, and that's what Selma Blair had, and yep, and that's it. I think that's it. So everything's been fine since then. I mean, yes, yeah.
Well, and from what I remember, just watching, kind of following your story, like you were walking and you were like almost like jogging, and it did seem like in the short term that things were getting better. I don't know if that's how you would consider it.
Yeah, I mean, but again, social media is, and
Right.
I was probably just really excited that I had I mean, like so you have like really good days and bad days. And a lot of people argue that you're just on the steroid high. And, cause I was walking with a cane. I was not doing a whole lot of walking period. I wasn't going into the office anymore, working from home and that kind of thing. So, and then so it was a series of unfortunate events for me. So I had that in 2019. Then I had to move for my job from New York to Texas. 2 weeks after we moved there, the pandemic hits. That means that I don't have physical therapy. I can't leave the house. We're in the, we didn't move down there in time to meet people. And like, so that really hurt me from a recovery standpoint. And I lost a lot. I lost so much muscle mass. And when you have MS, especially as long as I've had it, it's hard to get back. Once you lose it, it's really hard to get it back. So had that not happened, might be in a different place. But who knows?
Well, Jenny has, again, like she's mentioned, followed your story and has known you since childhood. I met you 2 weeks ago. So, and I heard a little bit about everything that you've been through, but can you just kind of, because I'm hearing all this and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did this all happen? Can you just, like, a brief timeline, like 2006, where were you? What were you doing? What was your career? And then those big milestones, because I could just imagine you going through all this stuff. But at what point do you decide to have a child? At what point do you decide to go to like Moscow? And so that would it would be helpful, I think, as a person who hasn't followed your story or who hasn't, been a part of this like amazing journey, even from afar, just to kind of get it all.
So 2006, I was in college, and upon this happened, right? I had to come home and take a big break off. And once I kind of got over that hump of the initial kind of crisis, for a year or two, I went back to college at WVU in 2008. And I was doing pretty well then. I was, asymptomatic largely. And I went in to study as a business management information system. So like a mixture of like business and tech. And that's where I met my future boss on Wall Street. He was lecturing, and he gave me an internship. And so I graduated in 2012 and moved up to New York City.
Wow. So you were working on Wall Street in Manhattan, busy place, with MS.
Yep.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And
just living your dream, kind of, except with that also being the nightmare that just kind of surfaces at times, huh?
Well, it was weird. It was like in 2008, when I decided to go back to school, I was all of a sudden really, really aware of my potential timeline. Again, when you're diagnosed with something like this, you don't know that you're going to be one of the lucky ones that gets a benign case. You don't know if you're going to be, if you've only got a few good years before. So I thought about that and kind of just started panicking and was like, I have to do it, and I'm going to do it 1,000,000,000%. And I'm going to do it. I'm no halfway. Because I need to work as fast as I can to make as much money as I can, so that if I do get sick, I will have options, right? So that's kind of the approach I did. So, and that landed me on Wall Street.
That's amazing.
I'm kind of a neurotic person by nature anyway. I just really, 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 and I got really lucky. That was just kind of fate where I, on the days where I feel I get hard on myself about my situation, I try to like take a deep breath, and it hasn't all been bad, right?
Mhm.
Or I'm like, well, I can't catch a break. Actually, I have caught a few large breaks that not a lot of people get. So the fast forward to 2012, I move up to New York City, work in the lower financial district. Just live the dream. It was so much fun. And I see it wasn't until I see. So that was, and then in 2006, so fast forward to 2016, all of a sudden, I just had one of those moments where I was like, oh my goodness, I'm 33 years old. I'm only focused on my career. I'm doing well health wise, and I want to. If I'm going to have a baby, I have to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where it's just like, what the hell was I thinking? But at the same time, I'm so happy I did it. It was just it was just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I got pregnant. We got pregnant and had the baby, and then that's kind of the line in the sand, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
after I had birth, gave birth to 2017, that's when you could tell. It was before that's when you could look at me and tell I had MS.
Mhm.
Before then, it was only after I'd had a martini here, you can kind of tell that. But so that was kind of the line in the sand. And then so we moved about 60 miles north of the city. And I still worked for the bank. And I still worked for the bank until April of this year.
Wow.
Yeah, I was still working for them. So yeah. And then so I think so fast forward, so that's 2017. I have the baby. I moved north of the city. I'm commuting in to the city a couple times a week. And then I kind of stopped commuting because my health is getting worse and worse. And that's when in 2018, the fall of 2018, I'm like, I can go get this treatment. But how I made the choice to go to Moscow was that, this isn't covered by insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to get in any of the clinical trials in the United States, I was too old and I'd had the disease for too long. They only want like the brand new patients and, that kind of stuff. But I guess it makes sense anyway. So, so if I wanted to get it like Selma Blair got it, it would have been over 6 figures to pay for it. I even sent her doctor. I was ready to go. He had all my files and everything and greenlit it. And then a friend of mine went to Moscow and she FaceTimed me every day that she was there.
Wow.
And yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to go over there and disappear. I'm not going to go over there and get some type of crazy treatment. It's real and it's the real deal. And so I went there because it was half as expensive.
Wow. So
Yeah.
your son was born though, right? Whenever you made the decision to go overseas?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
where did he stay? And like, I'm just thinking about all this as a mom. Like, I have this progressive disease. I have this chance that maybe I'm going to be okay. And the kid's got to stay back here, or did he come too, or what
No,
happened?
he stayed. So my Cooper's dad was a stay-at-home dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the income earner there. And I was in Moscow for a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they just stayed back and did their thing. And we FaceTimed and mommy lost all her hair. And I came home and Cooper thought I was a boy. And it was fun. It was,
Oh.
I know. That's when mommy was a boy. He'll see the pictures and it's funny.
Well, I just think that that's just such a huge sign of strength. And again, you have to put yourself first as a mom if you are thinking about your kids and longevity and just everything. And so, even at that young age, to say, you know what, I am going to be gone a month, but this could give me years in terms of quality of life or engagement. Like, that is just, I think, such a powerful, insightful decision to have made at that point. And I just think that that's incredible.
Well, thank you. Yeah, again, but it's one of those really intensely scary decisions you have to make. And, sometimes you're forced to make a decision like that could go sideways, but, you got to do your best and do your best with the information you have and the choices that you have. And yeah, I did it. I did it. And I'm glad I did it. And, but yeah, it's also gives you the a different set of challenges. Like I said, since then I've kind of clinically declined, and you never really understand. You see people in wheelchairs and things, but it's definitely it's hard, right? I mean, you can like of course, but when you actually live it, man, I never realized how people had it, right? And being a mom in a wheelchair is just, you miss out on everything. I mean, it's hard not to get, you grieve every little thing. You grieve, you grieve not being able to decorate for Halloween. You grieve not being able to trick or treat. You grieve not being able to go shopping, not being able to cook for him, not being able to take him to the pool, to travel, to basically leave your house, or to pick him up from school, or to take him to school, or to meet his friends, or meet his teacher. And it's just so many things on the whole mom scale. Whew, it's so hard. And I mean, being a mom is hard anyway. And you can, everybody's hard on themselves, but it's been, yeah. But my kid I think it's teaching him things, hopefully. It's,
Absolutely.
it's teaching him things. He will be, he's a helper. And it's just the most adorable thing. He's just the most sensitive, loving child. When we went to the movies, which was cool. We took him to see the Mario movie. And he helps without asking. He'll help me lift my legs into my feet into my wheelchair thing. He's just amazing. But again, it's just a different experience. Everything I get for him is ordered online. And I wish that I could do more for him, and of course, but you can just do your best and not try to lose your mind in the process.
Yeah, we talk
Yeah.
a lot about mental health on this podcast. And, certainly, I mean, any kind of diagnosis. We did an episode on women's health, and just like about how important it is to try to take care of ourselves, because we tend to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. And, for me, I've struggled with mental health my whole life. And it's, it is what it is. It's just something that I'll probably always have to deal with and take care of. But I imagine, like, on top of taking care of yourself physically and dealing with, like you're saying, the physical pain or whatever the disease is presenting to you at the time, it has to have that mental health component as well.
Absolutely, because it's and you also think about, since when I bought my house, I had to completely renovate it all to accommodate my wheelchair, and that kind of the overwhelming, job that is to come up with not only the resources, but the planning and the money and and just trying to figure out what you need and to anticipate. You need a different sink. You need to be able to reach everything. You need to be able to, I mean, it's just really hard. So yeah, so that's been a challenge as well. And, and also last summer I had a surgery on my spine to get so my part of having MS as well is you have what's called spasticity, and especially after chemo. So I had a pump put in that would deliver a little tiny dose of muscle relaxer to my legs, and that went sideways. And and it created a giant cerebrospinal fluid leak on my back. And yeah, about the size of a golf ball. And I spent 22 days in the hospital. And then was absolutely bedridden, unable to do anything, unable to sit up, unable to do my basic needs. That was last June. I got the pump finally removed in February.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, that was dark. That was really dark. So Cooper would come over a couple times a week and visit, and we'd try to play a little bit in my bed. But man, yeah, when you are a mom, it's hard, but you lose your health. And that's but I have friends who have MS and who have a worse situation than I do even, but they've got grown kids, and it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
One of my really close friends, her son is 26, and so it's kind of, but when you have a small child, it's particularly rough because you miss those years and you miss those moments, and yeah.
And you want to be so present,
Yeah.
but you're in pain at the same time, and
you can't do anything when you're, yeah.
Well, professionally, Jen and I are two different types of psychologists. And I think, at least sitting in my chair, sometimes we're the ones that are trying to find, like, here's where your hope comes from. Here's where this and that comes from. But where do you find this? Like in the gravity of all the different kind of losses that you see or that you've experienced, or even in, some of the higher points, where does your source of just perseverance, resilience come from?
Well, so I hear that a lot, which and you're the most resilient person I've ever met, which is, I mean, I appreciate where people are coming from, and it's a kind place, but I struggle with that because it's like, okay, well, I'm not Superwoman. What else are you gonna do? What else? What other choice do you have? But where I get my source from is I'm okay right now. I'm okay right now. In this minute, in this moment, I'm okay. Next moment, I can check in again if I'm okay. And if I'm not, I just have a good cry. You learn to cry and then you move on. But there's always there are just knowing that you don't know. You could get worse. You could not. You're probably not going to get better with a condition like mine, but you can get stronger and you can get more efficient. So much is lost. So I kind of like, whenever I figure something out, you start to appreciate things in a different way, I guess you can say. It's like, is it, I solved that problem of not falling to the floor. I solved the problem of what happens if my knees give out and I can't get back up in my chair, right? So I have like these little strategically placed step stools because I can get my butt on a step stool and then make that leap back into my chair. And that's really satisfying. I feel like a genius when I do those things. You know what I mean? So, and there are little things that you can always, if you don't look for them, it gets dark, right? But if you check in with yourself, you get familiar with how to cry. If you need to cry every day, you learn self-compassion. If you fight it, that's when it gets dark. There are things. So fighting darkness is hard, but you just have to do it. I don't know what else to say, but it's not all roses over here. It's and I got COVID a couple weeks ago. I thought I'll 10 days totally isolated, not one single person around. It was awful. When you can't get out of bed and you have to use the bathroom, things get pretty creative, right? So
Mhm.
again, if you don't laugh sometimes, you'll go crazy.
Yeah, I think the isolation part is so difficult. I watched that with my stepdad as he progressively got worse. He was in a chronic pain for over a decade. The whole time my husband and I have been together, he's never known my stepdad the way that I knew him growing up because he progressively got worse. And as he got worse, the visitors got less and the people willing to support him or my mom as his caretaker got less and less over the years. And so you kind of watch that isolation happen over time. And I think that contributed so much to his mental health as well.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess because I'm always trying to think, the whole purpose of our podcast is to have a community and that human connection that I feel like it's just vital to living. All of us need human connection, to have hope, to have, just happiness and joy. You need that. And so from, a perspective of like a friend or a family member, what is it that you find to be most helpful? Is it when someone just reaches out and says, can I come over? Or is that,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another thing that when you have a chronic disease, you have to get very good and very comfortable at being specific.
yes,
I need a salad. I need a salad. Can somebody bring a salad
yeah,
today? Because I can't cut up vegetables, and if I don't eat a vegetable, I'm going to lose my mind. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, but that's the
yeah,
truth too. It's like I can only eat so much microwave pasta before I, feel sick. So, but the most helpful for me
mm,
is for family and friends to recognize how difficult it is for me as a mother with a young child,
mm,
um, and to have an idea to pick up the little cousins and pick up Cooper and include him in everything and all that you guys do, or take him swimming, and without me having to coordinate and plan everything. And so that's really helpful. If when my friends and family are saying, hey, we're heading down to the pool. Can we swing by and pick Cooper up? Or how can, that to me makes, because what scares me the most is that thinking that Cooper has to sit out on with me,
mhm.
which isn't fair. So that's the most helpful, I think.
That's really sweet.
It is. I mean, we all need our village. We all need a network, but like you're saying, you need somebody to not even to think, just to include him and say, we've got this. Don't worry, make sure he's got some swimming trunks and then we're out, that make it
Yeah.
easier or as easy as possible to
Yeah.
include him.
Recognize. So being able to think about, and really it's just getting to know the person who's in need, and
Mhm.
what are the most painful parts of life. I mean, not physically. I mean, there's really nothing that you can do unless they need a massage or something. That's fine.
Sure,
But
sure.
but what are the most painful parts about their lives that they can't control, and how you can then help? Would it be that, hey, I've got, reaching out and saying very specific, not like, hey, if you need anything, let me know, because that's, that's hard. So, but you could say, hey, I've got 2 hours on Thursday evening open to you. What would be most helpful?
Mhm.
Like it's that type of like framing
Mhm.
that can help, because otherwise it's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't, if it's too open-ended, it's not going to be very helpful. But, and also anticipating like, okay, I know that Niki, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be a single mother. I'm no longer with Cooper's dad, but we live close proximity to each other. But to kind of anticipate that and say, I know that Niki can't get out of the house, so hey, I'm going to bring over I'm going to bring over a pitcher of margaritas and we're going to sit on your back porch.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that'll perk her right up. She probably needs that. Or just like I'm bringing some toys over and we're going to play with Cooper. Because Cooper, he's a kid. He wants to get outside. He wants to go play, but mommy can't go in the grass. Mommy can't help you ride your bike. And I can't, watch for cars and flag people down. I mean, it's impossible. So yeah. So recognizing how somebody could perceive that they are failing because of their condition, and then wrapping love around that, wrapping real support around that.
I appreciate you sharing that because I think, I fall into that trap too. I have a friend with a terminal diagnosis, and I'm often wondering, okay, how can I help them or help her and her child, And, we fall into that trap of let me know what I can do, let me know. And it's like being more specific in your, what you're offering to them. Just can I come by and get your daughter and take her to a play date, or, just those types of things.
And I also think it's worth saying that even on my really good days, sometimes I'm so fatigued that if somebody asks me a question like that, I need help with everything. It's too much mental energy to be able to just itemize and then prioritize and say, okay, well, most specifically, this is what I need. It's just like, I'm fine. I've got everything I need. But if you're like, hey, I've got 2 hours here. What could we do? Right. Or I've got, would this be helpful? I'm just start a meal train for you, or, I'm going to the nursery. Do you need some potting soil? Can I bring over some plant? Do you like, something like that? Something that, so I think that, yes, plenty of people do that. And I think that's also why people probably stop reaching out a lot, because nobody likes to feel like they're not being helpful. And if the person they're trying to help just always says, I don't need anything, you'll probably stop asking. But when you really want to help somebody, you have to put more structure around your offer, right? You need to kind of have that conversation with them. Describe to me what is the most difficult, what is the most difficult part of life right now, besides your physical, besides the diseases. Let's talk about life. And then I'm going to help you with that in ways that I can. Right. I think that is helpful. My friend, one of my really good friends who has a son, has a daughter, the same age group as Cooper. Her daughter is on the swim team, and she's like, I will, if he wants to join the swim team, I will do all of the transportation for you. I think he would really like it. I think, of course he didn't like it, but he's just a kid, and he acted like he didn't know how to swim, and so it wasn't for him. But anyway, that was a really sweet thing. She's like, I will take him. I will pick him up and drop him off every day, if he wants to do it, because she knows that that's important to me.
The thing I keep hearing you say, which I just find, I just really value it, is that how mindful to the moment you are, whether it is an okay moment, a fine moment, or a need-based moment. You just seem to stay so present in your current place that I just feel like that has to just be such a protective and helpful quality and just mindset to kind of be in it. And I appreciate that, because I believe in that kind of mindfulness just from everything, but it's just really neat to hear you say it in everything that you're aware of, whether it's for you, for your kid, your own health assessment, your own mental health assessment, or even like your needs from a social standpoint. It's all about what is needed in this moment. And that's powerful.
And so but I don't want to give myself too much credit here. Of course, when you're really trying to fight for an improvement in your life, you educate yourself as much as you can. There's a difference between that and understanding what is the best way to do it and actually doing it. So I don't think I deserve full credit, because believe me, I have days where I just just lose it, phone off the
Totally
hook.
fine. That's the moments. That's
Phone off
also
the
a
hook.
moment.
We're gonna binge, and I'm gonna cry, and I'm gonna order pizza, and whatever. But yeah, you try to, you always have to get back to that point where it's like, I know that's unhealthy. I recognize that's unhealthy, and today is going to be, I'm going to try a little bit harder today than I did yesterday.
Yeah, but those moments are good moments too, because it's at least awareness that I'm giving myself this freedom just to have this experience. Whatever that experience is in that moment, you allow yourself to have it. And I just think that that's a very,
and
I
that,
think
again,
makes sense.
that's another, the whole self-compassion thing, right? You can beat yourself up, and it took me a long time to learn how to cry, and I didn't know that. And my therapist told me, she's like, your face turns red. I can see you physically holding that back. She's like, crying is like sweating or pooping. You hold it in and it's going to make you sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I was like, but I don't want to be the girl that cries every night before bed because I feel awful and I'm so worn down from the day. And she's like, if that's what you need, you cry for 10 days. You cry for 10 minutes every night until you don't need to cry for 10 minutes anymore. You do it every day until you don't need to do it anymore. And I'm like, what a crazy, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's like, you just do that. You just do that. And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
You do it until you don't need to do it anymore. And then, so it's training, really have, I struggle with, I think I'm sort of a control freak in my life. I've always been like that. Which makes the struggle, I think, even harder when you have something that controls you in every single minute, second of your day, and your life is controlled by awful disease, right? So you gotta retrain yourself to, the whole idea of acceptance and blah, it's just one of the hardest things, right? There's radical acceptance, I think, which is one of the hardest things I've, I have days where it feels easier, but it's usually just because I feel a little bit better. When I'm feeling like crap, I don't accept anything. But yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I often feel like when or not often, but I do often think of you. And I feel like I think of certain people in situations when I'm out. I think, well, how would I do this if I were in Niki's situation? If I was in a wheelchair, how would I access this? Or how, I just constantly think about that. Or if I'm working out and I'm not really feeling it, I'm like, stop. Like you are so lucky to be able to do this whatever I'm doing at the moment. Like, stop, quit your bitching and just do it, get it over. It's sort of, when I say I feel inspired, it kind of helps me draw on just like, get your ass up and do what you need to do. And so I often think of people that I know that are going through something incredibly difficult, friends that are dealing with diagnoses and things like that. And so when I say it's inspiring, I hope that it doesn't come off in like a negative way, that it's just like, it helps me get, if somebody that struggles day in and day out with mental health, it helps me to think about this and go, if nothing else, do it for somebody else that can't right now, and I like to, a lot of times I'll dedicate like my meditation or my yoga or whatever exercise I'm doing that day. I think about somebody while I'm doing it as like a dedication to that human, and how, I'm just trying to send like that energy to them.
That made me think, again, of a friend of mine who is also in a wheelchair, and she has friends of hers and I think this is so special, and I get like teary every time I think about it, because I see them do it on Facebook, but they will, as ways to help her, when they go on the hike, when they go and they're at the farmer's market and they've got great, produce, or they take a picture and they send it to her so she can experience it too. And it's like, this is I'm taking you with me. You know what I mean? Like, you're still part of this. Like, even though you're not here with me, here's a video of the trail that I am walking, and you're here too.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such a beautiful thing, that really does matter, because it's like, you often, like, you don't appreciate it. Like, for me, it's I get my groceries delivered, all right, and but I get hard on myself because I'm like, I find myself, I know this sounds so stupid, but nothing's stupid and everything matters, but I find myself, I got down on myself because I'm like, I order the same crap every week. I order the same food. And then I'm like, wait, like, it's been so long since I've been to the grocery store. I don't even know what else they have.
Yeah.
It's like you take that for granted, and it's like, it's so, like, those little, like, parts of, so I think it's great when you can dedicate yourself to, like, you don't want to go to the gym, but what I wouldn't pay to go to the gym, right? Or, like, to walk to the mailbox and get my mail.
Yeah.
Like, sell everything I have. But so I don't know where I was really going with that, but I think that's along the same thread as, like, dedicating a meditation to somebody, or including them in ways, even though they're not physically there. It's like, here's a picture of flowers that I saw today, on my hike or something. I think that's a beautiful concept.
And a way to continue that connection to somebody, and, at least, feel less isolated, maybe, in some ways. I don't know, but
the opposite of that to me is, Esther Perel is one of my favorite psychologists, or she's a relationship psychologist. I forget, but she did a podcast. She was a guest on Brene Brown's podcast. And in that, when they were talking about it, they were talking about her, she's Jewish, and her family, parts of her family were in the Holocaust and that kind of thing. But her point was that she meets people, and they say, oh, this doesn't, like, I'm going through this, but it pales in comparison to what your family has gone through, or you have. And what her response to that, I think, was so powerful, was like, comparative suffering. Like, like, your experience of suffering could be, small to what I'm going, what I would, if I was going through that. It's not my experience with something like MS, right? But to you don't have MS. What you're going through, whether it's your car breaking down, or you whatever. I do not hold back. I know family members that do it to me. They'll say, "Oh, this has nothing. This has nothing. Like, I'm going through this hard thing, but it's nothing compared to what you go through on a daily basis." And I'm like, "Wait, that's not fair.
right.
Don't hold back your life. I want to know about that stuff.
Right.
I want to hear it, and don't qualify it by reminding me how shitty my situation is." Right? We all know about it. We all know how it is. I know how it is. Let's talk about real stuff.
Yeah.
And I also got, my boyfriend is amazing, but like any couple, we get into arguments and stuff. And I thought it was awesome. Like, I provoked him on purpose just to make a point. Because he never raises his voice or says anything that, he's a gentle spirit. And I'm like, listen, if I am being a jerk, I want you to tell me. I'm a jerk,
Yeah.
I want to feel more human. I want to feel, I want you to tell me I'm being an asshole.
Mhm.
It feels good. That makes me, that's a real connect. Like as a human, that is a, like, like, I don't want, I want, that's real to me. And
Mhm.
so much of my life is really real, but then I don't want to be protected in all the other experiences of human life, because they
Like
don't want to add to
too.
my suffering, because I'm like, wait, that doesn't, it actually makes me feel more real when you tell me I'm being a jerk, or you're like, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it's just like, you kind of get that like zing of exhilaration when somebody's like, you're being, unreasonable. I'm like, I know I am. Thank you for calling me out on it.
you're,
That's fine.
you're like, don't treat me with kid gloves. Take
Yes,
the gloves off
exactly.
and say it like it is.
Right. Because that is where realness lives.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
much of my life is too real in ways that I can't control. You know what I mean? I still want to live and live a normal life, as normal as I can live it.
Right.
Don't take it away. You're not protecting me, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're not protecting me. Now, some people, that's just me though. Some other people might,
Right.
it might be too much. And, it just depends. So might not be able to take anything more, but in my experience, that's what it is. And how that wraps up into, trust and friendship and love and connection with people. It's part of, I'm a human. I struggle like anybody else struggles. I have more unique struggles than most people.
Mhm.
On top of that, but I'm a person like everybody else is. I'm a mom
Right.
like everybody else is,
Mhm.
Right.
and that's really important.
And do you find as my kids are getting older, my youngest is about to turn 5, and I'm finding now, like, yes, I love playing with them and doing all the things that you've kind of talked about, water balloon fights, whatever it is. But some of the most precious time I'm finding is like laying in bed before they go to sleep, and they're just kind of like free flowing thoughts to me, and or when they want me to be near them still, because I know that this is fleeting and that it's not, not before too long I'm not going to be cool, or they're not going to want to be around me as much as they aren't. But you you are having those moments, and do you really kind of like soak that in of just how precious those moments are, or is it still really hard for you because you feel like you're thinking about what you're missing?
Both, both. I soak it in, because I soak it in more than anything, because I don't, I'm just now even getting back on an overnight schedule with Cooper, because yeah, I mean, recovering from, yeah, anyway, so yeah, but then again, it's, I feel he understands, but when he drags out all of his toys and he's like, mommy, will you please play, play people with me, or get on the floor and play, and I'm like, mommy can't, let's come up with different things, or he'll help me. I buy a kid appropriate tools of like, I bought him this like plastic knife set where I can teach him how to cut up vegetables where I can.
Mhm.
So it's easy to like, I'm starting to learn better ways, instead of just fighting and then feeling guilty that, hey, I can't play like that. I can't do water balloon fights or super soaker fights, but I can't, here's what I can do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And but that takes a lot to learn, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's not just like all of a sudden you have all the answers and all the creative workarounds that,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't just, you don't wake up and have that knowledge. So it's a painful sort of, again, somebody needs to write a book.
Yeah, I was like, that
On
just gave me
parenting.
some ideas, Niki.
Yeah, on parenting with a disability. Yeah, because here's some ideas, wheelchair friendly ideas, and that will your by age group.
That's a good idea.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea because
Yeah.
we had talked before when I reached out about doing this podcast. You were like, there's just not a ton of resources for parents with disabilities on parenting. And I was like, okay, I got online that day and I was Googling and I was like, she's right. I mean, I eventually found one good resource through the Looking Glass, which was a website that's kind of, it started right around when we were born in the early 80s by a mom with a disability and just lack of resources and sort of like what are the struggles of a parent with a disability. And it's a broad range, obviously. They might have intellectual disabilities or whatever, physical impairment, whatever the disability is, but they've sort of created this resource, this site to help parents. Particularly, it seemed to have a lot on there as far as like if you're challenged with custody of your child or if somebody, trying to like prove that you are capable of being a parent. I mean, I think that is one thing that probably I would assume comes up, whether it's a mental impairment or whatever. And so they've sort of honed in on that, and they provide support services and resources for parents, having to go to court and fight for their rights as a parent.
It's that I've been so fortunate with that. I mean, really, it's just had I not had the support of Cooper's dad through all of this and my latest since last summer, I mean, I don't know what I would have done. My dad's 73 years old. My sister is she's really, really busy with her family. I mean, she helps where she can, and that's about it. And all my other family live a bit too far away to really, be so really. I mean, it's a thin net, it really is. And if you don't even have that, it would be I mean, I don't even want to think about it, but that is great that type of resource does exist because, man.
Talk about icing on the cake, right? If someone were actively trying to take him away, I mean, you can imagine just as any mom, I mean, I think about that all the time. If I were divorced, how difficult that would be to ship my kids off. I can't stand for them to be out of my sight for, 20 minutes most of the time. Sometimes it's nice to have a break, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to give up that control. Like you said, like we want to control and try to give them the best childhood possible. And so it's hard to give that up to someone else. But like you're saying, you've been lucky. There's many ways. And it sounds like in that way, you've had supportive partners to be there for you in that respect. And so that's a blessing in itself, not to fight that battle on top of other battles.
Yeah, it sure is. And I'm forever grateful. But again, I will go back to that, you know what? It's not really been the easiest life, but there's lots to be grateful for. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's the flippin' truth. It really is. It's the truth because you lose sight of that and you're guaranteed to just, I don't know. You got to get out. You got to get some sunshine on your face, even if it's through my storm door. I'm getting some sunshine on my face. Even if there are mosquitoes waiting for me to open the door. I'm going to do it and I'm going to be happy about it. Or if I'm not happy about it, I'm going to sit there until I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, we're definitely using a lot of the same techniques. As I've listened to you talk today, I'm like, okay, we're doing a lot. We're mindfulness, making sure you're getting that vitamin D, getting your sunshine. Grateful. I try to practice just gratitude every day. Every day when I wake up, like 3 things I'm grateful for, and I try to switch it up. But we're practicing a lot of the same things to keep our mental health in check. I mean, ultimately, what we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to stay sane.
And again, what you said about connection is the truth. Whether you're a mom or you're a disabled mom or you're a sister or you're you work at McDonald's or you work on Wall Street. It's and that actually, this is funny because when I got offered my job on Wall Street, I was like, I can't do this. They are going to eat. I'm going to be eaten alive as soon as I go up there. Like, they're going to know that I'm an imposter and I don't know what I'm talking about. And like, my boss told me though, that something that is cliche, but it's still with me. That I don't care if it's you or the CEO of the bank. You both put your pants on one leg at a time. And I'm like, yeah, right. You are right. And that kind of just makes you realize that everybody's human. Everybody needs love. Everybody needs connection. And that is what it all boiled down to. And whatever ways that you can connect with people, you have to keep those bridges open. You can't be like, I can't give in to how easy it would be to just not return the phone call, not return the text, keep the doors shut. And I'm just going to indulge the darkness here and just, I'm tired of fighting. You got to do that, because it all adds up. All those little moments, as exhausted as you're going to be after it, it's worth it, because memories are so important, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. I feel like you've given us like incredible perspective. I know I've learned a lot in just talking to you. Selfishly, I just kind of wanted an excuse to catch up with you, because it's been so long. I still look at you and see like 8-9-year-old Niki doing a back walkover.
Jenny. Oh my goodness, same.
It's wild. I'm like, how did 30 years go by? But here we are. Who would have thunk it, right?
Crazy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're certainly going to, I'm going to post on our website, Through the Looking Glass. I'm going to keep researching, see what I can find. And I love your idea. Like a bunch of OTs, PTs need to get together, come up with tabletop activities, things that are accessible for all parents.
I don't know if this would also be something, but back when I was working, I talk about the renovations in my house. I didn't have to pay for any of them. Because there's something called West Virginia State Rehabilitation Services. They paid for my college tuition.
Oh, wow.
That was like but they never asked for like, that I remember, like a letter from my doctor. Anyway, they knew I had MS. They gave me a laptop, paid for my college tuition. I bought this house. It needed major renovations for me to live here and continue working. And that's the catch, is that you have to be employed. But they will help you get a car. They will help you do whatever you need to keep in the workforce. And I did not know that. And I don't think a lot of people do. And I would like it. So if you have a place to share that sort of resources, you should include that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
And it doesn't, I don't know the limitations to it, but I'm pretty sure like if you do have a child with disabilities that you can, and you're working, you can still, I mean, this doesn't have to be you yourself, but so I think that would be important to include, because everybody I talk to that's like, oh, my friend has polycystic kidney disease. And I'm like, have you gotten support from rehab? And she's like, what? I'm like, okay, let me tell you about rehab, because they did like $80,000 worth of renovations to my house.
Wow.
Built a ramp outside and like it's just, had I not gone through the spinal surgery, they would have helped me with my van and done all of that. So, and I would still be working, but anyway.
Wow.
Well, Yeah, we will definitely link that on our website as well. I'm sure each state probably has their own rehab service.
Mhm.
No, it's specific.
Well, like my friend lives in Colorado. She's like, "Can I get in on this?" She's like,
Mm,
"It doesn't have that," and so, but West Virginia somehow has a really great program.
Well,
that's encouraging for us.
that is encouraging. We'll definitely
Like, wait a minute, we get the worst of the worst. Like,
How are we progressive here? But we'll take it.
that's right. We'll take it.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Nikki. Seriously, this has been a wonderful experience. I mean, just for the three of us to hear, and I think so for our listeners too. And I mean, this has been really, really powerful. So thank you.
you're very welcome. I'm glad that I could join you guys in this.
All right. Until next week, catch us on our Instagram at the LYLAS Podcast. You can check out our website where we have that resources tab where you'll find the resources we talked about today, lylaspodcast.com, or check us out on Facebook at the LYLAS Podcast. Until next week.
It's us. Out.
Bye.